Hello, my name is Naomi Forster, and I am a teacher for multisensory impairment. That is, I teach children who have both vision and hearing impairments. Uh, Today, I'd like to talk about the vision and hearing of children with Down syndrome. Children with Down syndrome may have many different challenges. Issues with hearing and vision are often relatively minor, but good management of sensory impairment can make a huge difference in quality of life. Being aware of the way sensory impairment impacts their access to the world can mean that we can support children to effectively overcome their difficulties. I'm going to show you some of the common eye and ear differences caused by Down syndrome and how they affect the child's perception of the world and their learning. We are going to look at the tools and strategies that we can use to support the sensory experience of our children and how we can make best use of that. And finally, we're going to look at multisensory impairments, looking at the ways what happens when both hearing and vision are impaired. Now, the first part of understanding hearing impairment is to understand the how the ear functions. So I'm going to play a short video. If I just move it over. Now, the external ear, known as the pinna, is really only the beginning of a system that leads to sound being processed by the brain. Sound waves travel down the ear canal, basically the tube, to the eardrum, which is a thin membrane. That leads to the middle ear, which is an air-filled cavity with the oval window and vented by the eustachian tube, which is a passage going from the back of the ear to the back of the throat. In the ear are the three smallest bones of the body, the ossicles, which act as a chain, amplifying sound waves travelling across this cavity, passing the information from the eardrum to the oval window. Of course, anything that obstructs the ossicles, such as mucus, is going to cause difficulties. This is the semicircular canals, which are not actually part of the hearing system. They form a sensory system of their own, the balance system or vestibular system. But they're fluid filled and lead to the cochlea. Now, the cochlea is basically a long tube that is coiled into this snail shell shape, and it's filled with fluids and thousands of hair cells, which are basically react to vibration in the fluid. And from the cochlea, the nerves take the information from the cochlea to the brain, where the most important part of hearing happens, the processing of sounds. Now, in the hair cells of the cochlea are possibly the most vulnerable to damage, and it's the hair cells nearest the opening that are sensitive to high frequencies, and as they travel down the cochlea, sensitive to lower frequencies. And this is why often the high frequencies are most easily damaged by absent sections of the cochlea, or where the hair cells have been damaged. So, looking at the 3 parts of the ear: the external ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. This is quite useful when we're talking about different kinds of hearing loss, because different difficulties in each of the 3 sections cause different kinds of hearing loss. So the ear canal is obviously vulnerable to impacted wax and infection, and in Down syndrome is often much narrower than in the general population. The eardrum leading to the middle ear can be an issue where if the in the case of buildup of fluids, glue ear, which basically muffles all sound by impacting the movement of the ossicles, where the damage in the cochlea, known as sensory neural hearing loss, will takes sound of different frequencies, may impact different frequencies more than others. So sound waves travel in through the ear canal to the eardrum, causing vibrations of the eardrum and vibrations of the ossicles that amplify the sounds, amplifying that vibration to the fluid in the cochlea, which then vibrates the tiny little hair cells in the cochlea, stimulating the auditory nerve. So anything that causes this passage of vibration from the outside world to the auditory nerve is going to cause a form of deafness. Okay, I'm just going to close that. So, what causes hearing loss? Now, for more than 60%, that's more than 2/3 of children with Down syndrome, they will experience episodes of glue ear during their childhood. That's a temporary hearing loss. Scans have also shown that in 75% of scans observed in a study were seen to have differences in the vestibular system, which can lead to more damage within the cochlea. Other causes of deafness are more common in children with Down syndrome than in the general population. Now, this does not mean that they are very frequent, but they are more frequent within the Down syndrome population. So, look at some of the causes of hearing loss. Differences in any part of the ear can cause hearing loss. Wax buildup in the ear canal muffles the sound. It basically dampens all the sound going to the middle ear. If that middle section with the 3 bones, sometimes that can develop in a way where the bones are fused or unusually shaped, and that again will cause poorer transmission of sound across the middle ear. And a buildup of fluid in the middle ear can impair the movement of the bones of the middle ear. And the vestibular aqueduct joining the middle ear and cochlea has been seen to be more commonly enlarged, which allows pressure to damage the hair cells in the cochlea. Hair cells can be misformed, so if malformed hair cells means they just cannot transmit the information to the auditory nerve effectively. And the auditory nerve itself can be malformed or absent, causing poor sound transmission to the brain. There are some common differences in the structure of ears in children with Down syndrome, and they cause different levels of difficulty. The outer ears of children with Down syndrome are often smaller and rounder than others in their family, which actually causes very little effect on hearing. It can sometimes cause different difficulties with fitting hearing aids. The ear canal and middle ear are often smaller and narrower in people with Down syndrome. Now, this doesn't actually have a great effect on hearing, but it can mean that impacted earwax and glue ear are more problematic than they would be in someone with a wider ear canal and middle ear. Children with Down syndrome are more likely than other children to have differences in their vestibular system and cochlea. Also, the auditory nerve can be unusually slim or absent, and all these conditions can affect one ear more than the other, or can affect both. So let's look a little bit more at glue ear. Okay, glue ear is the most common and well-known hearing difficulty experienced by children with Down syndrome. Over 60% of children with Down syndrome will experience episodes of glue ear during their childhood. Glue ear, now the technical word is otitis media with effusion, or OME, and it's a very common childhood condition. Affects about 1 in 7 children at some point. However, in Down syndrome, it can be more of a problem because of those narrower ear canals and narrower eustachian tube make drainage more difficult. The effect to perception of sound is probably more like putting your hands over your ears, or it's muffled. All sounds are made more quiet. But glue ear is not permanent, and it usually clears naturally. And if it doesn't clear naturally, the surgical insertion of grommets, which are very fine tubes that are placed into the eardrum to allow natural drainage and aeration to the middle ear, can be surgically implanted. And actually, that's a very common surgery. Now, when experiencing episodes of glue ear, it can be very distracting because sound levels are not consistent, and this can make learning sounds much more difficult, which, if you already have something that impacts your learning of language, it can have a greater impact. And this is why it's quite common to use hearing aids to improve the sound access for children with Down syndrome during long episodes of glue ear. So, permanent conductive hearing loss, that is a permanent loss that is caused by the middle in the middle ear. Narrow ear canals that are so common in Down syndrome mean that sound waves are slightly impeded as the ear, causing a mild hearing loss. Now, a mild hearing loss often has only a mild impact on a person's life. They maybe use facial clues more to fill in sounds they miss, maybe choose to turn the TV or music a little louder. However, if you've also got episodes of glue ear, as this is added to the mild permanent loss, then the impact of hearing loss can be greater. The ossicles, the bones of the middle ear, can be malformed or fused in people with Down syndrome, though often this is only recognised through an MRI scan. It can also happen as a result of repeated ear infections or glue ear. Now, a bone conduction hearing aid is often the best way to experience sound at normal levels because it's a hearing aid that basically misses out the middle ear. So I'll talk a little bit more about the different kinds of hearing aids later. So sensory neural hearing loss is the permanent damage to the hair cells in the cochlea, and can affect one or both ears, and can range from mild, which would be just difficulty hearing some very, very quiet sounds, to profound, which is unable to hear even very loud sounds. And a sensory neural hearing loss may only affect certain pitches. Most commonly, it's the high-pitched sounds that are harder to hear. Now, there is currently no treatment to regrow hair cells in the cochlea. So it's not treatment, but management. And hearing aids are programmed to amplify the sounds that cannot be heard, and may be used very effectively. However, hearing aids do not give the same quality sound as hearing naturally. I think it's very important to recognise that hearing aids do not fix hearing. These are the three main types of hearing aids that you're seeing. Probably the behind the ear hearing aid is the most familiar looking. It has a microphone at the top that picks up sound, a processor that sits behind the ear, which picks up sound and transmits it to the ear as a louder sound. It is basically an amplifier. It can make all sounds louder. The problem with it is it makes all sounds louder. So even background sounds can be a problem. But this is probably the most common kind of hearing aid you'll see. The bone conduction hearing aid is particularly useful for middle ear problems, because it basically bypasses the middle ear. The sound is transmitted to the skull directly behind the ear and sent straight to the cochlea. So the sound transmitter is held against the head by a headband, and that has one or two microphones attached. That is usually a temporary solution. You can see the headband here. Now, you may also hear about cochlear implants. Now, cochlear implants are only suitable for severe and profound hearing losses. They're a surgically implanted device with an electro array placed inside the cochlea. There's a microphone and processor worn behind the ear, and it transmits the information to the implanted device. Now, the benefits of all these devices is access to sound. Unfortunately, microphone technology means that access to sound is not always as high quality as we'd like. All microphones suffer from the difficulties of picking up background noise, from needing to be kept clean and dry. But hearing aids can be make a real difference in accessing the full range of speech sounds. Obviously, the other way to manage not hearing clearly is to provide information in a visual format. The use of sign language provides a visual reinforcement for the sound that's heard, which can be particularly useful if the sounds that you are hearing are not clear. So with a conductive loss, where all sounds are kind of muffled, the sign language can add clarity and consistency. Now, the use of visual photo cards, symbol cards are also extremely useful because they can be referred back to. They're something tangible that you can look back to. So now let's look at eyes. Now, light enters the eye and focuses and is focused by the lens. That the focus light is transmitted to the light receptive cells at the back of the eye and converted to signals that travel along the optic nerve to the brain. I mean, that's a very simplistic explanation of a very complex system. Now, the eyes of people with Down syndrome tend to be one of the physical characteristics that other people recognise. The eyes of people with Down syndrome are usually almond-shaped and may have a sort of downward slant. They often have a fold of skin in the upper eyelid that covers the inner corner of the eye, and that's called an epicanthal fold. And brush field spots, which are little pale dots in the iris, are very common in Down syndrome. They do happen in the general population, but they're more frequent in people with Down syndrome. And they're basically caused by differences in the growth of the connective tissue. However, all these very visible differences have very little impact on sight. However, it's estimated that between 70 and 100% of people with Down syndrome have eye conditions that affect their sight to some degree. But most of the eye conditions can be managed to make the impact on life as mild as possible. Again, it's about managing the conditions to reduce the impact. Now, eyelid problems are relatively common in Down syndrome, and the impact is more in the discomfort they cause rather than in affecting vision. So ptosis, literally droopy eyelids, caused by low muscle tone, where low muscle tone is a common problem in Down syndrome. Basically, where the muscles are not strong enough to hold the eye open. And obviously, you can't see through closed eyes. So that's the impact. Blepharitis, which is ingrown and infected eyelashes, can be very irritating and very uncomfortable. And conjunctivitis is an infection of the membrane that covers the front of the eye, becoming sort of red and inflamed. This is often called pink eye. Again, these are conditions that are not actually affecting vision, but are uncomfortable and inconvenient. So the most common cause of vision impairment in people with Down syndrome is long-sightedness, affecting up to 60% of people with Down syndrome. Basically, long-sightedness means that the eye focuses better on things at a distance rather than close up. It can be caused by either the eyeball itself being too small and causing the eye to focus at a point just behind the light-sensitive cells in the back of the eye. So the image projected onto those light sensitive cells is blurred. This can also happen due to the muscles that adjust the lens not being able to adjust the lens adequately. You can see here that the effect of both conditions is the same, and actually this can be very effectively corrected using glasses. Now, glasses can significantly improve the vision of someone with long sight. The lenses adjust the focus so that near objects can be seen more clearly. Bifocals, a split lens where the lower section is the correct prescription for reading and close play, and the top half is the correct prescription for looking at the environment, have actually been found to be very effective for children with Down syndrome, and have had a lot of success in children being more tolerant of wearing them. The prescriptions of lenses for long sight are given a positive value. So -1 would be quite a mild prescription. I think the lenses you can see on these pictures are about a +4 and a +3, I think. But as you can see, they make the image larger. Now, in a smaller proportion of people with Down syndrome, the issue is almost the opposite, that the eyeball is too long, or the lens cannot correct enough, so that the images focus point in front of the light sensitive cells. So the image projected on those light sensitive cells at the back of the eye is blurry. And again, this can usually be very effectively corrected with spectacles, with glasses. Now, glasses for short-sightedness actually make the image slightly smaller and to focus the image correctly in the eye. Prescriptions for short sight have a minus value, so it might be a -1 lens would be quite mild. I think what we've got in the picture here is actually a -4 and a -3 in each lens. You can see it actually makes the image slightly smaller, but pulls it into focus. It's very important to have your child's sight checked regularly, every 6 months to a year, to check that their lenses are correct for them. Because lenses that eyes are continually developing and growing throughout childhood, and lenses that are too powerful or too weak can cause headaches, and also will make glasses less pleasant for your child and lead to and often lead to glasses refusal. Another condition commonly seen in Down syndrome is nystagmus. Now, that's the name given to uncontrollable rhythmic movements of the eye. Now, there's a lot of different data on how many children with Down syndrome experience nystagmus, and the estimates range from 9% to 30%, which is a very vague number, I think, but it tends to be one of those conditions that you can actually see the movement of the eye, and you would expect it to give a lot of blurring. Often, however, children can adapt for their nystagmus, and you may find them using a tilted head to look, or moving their head. But basically, nystagmus can make it more difficult to focus and more difficult to follow movement. Another quite common condition in Down syndrome is a squint. The proper name for that is strabismus, which is basically caused by low muscle tone. So since low muscle tone is an almost universal characteristic of Down syndrome, and the movement of the eye is controlled by muscles, low muscle tone can affect the movement of the eyes. Now, generally, the two eyes work together to produce a 3D perception of the world. However, if the eyes are not working together, the brain will either perceive two images overlaying each other, so double vision, or the brain will ignore the image from one eye and focus on the image from the other eye, which can lead to a lazy eye where the weaker eye does not develop fully. This tends to be corrected either through surgery or and also through glasses, encouraging the strengthening of the muscles in the weaker eye. Now, some children with Down syndrome, between 1% and 2%, are born with a clouding in their lens. Now, this is a cataract. And in about half of the cases, the clouding of the lens is impairing vision to the point that actually a surgical replacement of the lens is suggested. For many, the cataract means that they may experience slightly clouded vision, but often the cataract is small enough that it has very little impact on vision. And that's something that through working with your optometrist, you can help you make decisions about that. Now, it has been argued all, but most people with Down syndrome have been found to have some reduced acuity. That is, they're not able to see details and how images are different from their background. And this is not corrected by glasses, even if the glasses are the correct prescription. However, by choosing contrasting and uncluttered backgrounds, this can really significantly be helped. So this is about changing the environment for their vision. Find out which colour background and which colour works best for your child. Most commonly, it's black on white or black on yellow, or white on black or yellow on black. But it's about giving a clear difference between the background and the details you want to be focused on. What we really want is to make the world as accessible to children as possible. Now, glasses can correct long-sightedness and short-sightedness, and probably have the biggest impact in terms of supporting vision. Choosing well-fitting frames in colours or designs your child likes can really help to encourage regular use. I think that opticians now have such a wide range of colours and styles, and also there's some styles, notably the tomato glasses, which is I don't know if you can see the blue and the pink ones in the picture, are designed to fit well to the slightly flattened face shape of someone with Down syndrome. They've got a lot of adjustability in the nose pad, so they can be made comfortable. A lot of children's glasses now come with easy to attach restraining straps, so they don't fall off as easily, and they're not going to be lost as easily by a very active, busy child. Now, there are a huge range of magnification aids available, from the most simple sort of handheld magnifying glass to computer systems which use the computer's camera to access the image. For a person who has difficulty with memory, as a lot of people with Down syndrome do, simple systems often are the most usable. And it can often be much more powerful to produce resources in accessible formats so that it is not necessary to use magnifiers. And it's worth remembering that magnifiers cannot and do not solve the problem of clutter, of a busy background. They simply make a bigger image of the clutter. Simple is usually better. Now, the difficulty most people with Down syndrome have with acuity is that they perceive less difference between the page and the image on it. So keep images simple, uncluttered, with clear outlines. Plain, single colour backgrounds and pictures make the image much clearer. Now, photocopiers. Instinctively, photocopying images or text enlarging on the photocopier seems like an easy solution and seems like the obvious solution. However, for someone with acuity difficulties, that actually makes the problem worse, because photocopying an image makes it fainter and gives less contrast against the background, meaning more difficulty for seeing contrast. Enlarging by making the font larger before printing is much more effective, as it keeps the crisp edges of the letters and text and images looking much more visible. Print size. The size and clarity of the letters can make a big difference in the child's ability to see the differences between letters. You'll often be told the smallest size a child can see. N5 would be the normal, someone with normal sight can see. That's the size of the small print on letters, and it's really not the ideal size for text. You wouldn't want to read everything in small print. So if you can read, or the average person can read N5, then N12 is probably the size you find comfortable to read. That's about the size used in paperback books. If your child can read N12 as the smallest size they can read, then perhaps N18 might be more comfortable. And for early readers and people first coming to print, a size or two bigger than that might even be better. Since many people with Down syndrome have visual impairment, and many people with Down syndrome have a hearing impairment, it follows that a considerable number will have impairments in both senses. And this adds an extra layer of challenge for us in making the world accessible to them. Vision and hearing are our distant senses. They enable us to find out about the world beyond our bodies. A person with impaired hearing uses their vision to give them more information and compensate for what they don't hear. Speech reading, looking for clues. A person with impaired vision uses their hearing to compensate for what's not seen. If both hearing and vision are impaired, then there are more difficulties in compensating. Impaired vision and hearing impacts communication, access to information, and mobility, even when the impairment is mild. If spoken words are not clearly heard, then lip reading and looking at body language and facial expression helps to fill in the gaps. But if the visual information is difficult to see clearly, then the communication needs additional support. Children with eye motor control difficulties struggle more to give eye contact that supports communication. Be aware that the fully hearing and sighted person gets information about the environment that enables them to move confidently about it. If visual information about distance, speed of movement, and changes in surface are not clear, then sound information becomes more important. But we need to think about giving it additional clues. Gaining information about the world is more difficult if vision and sound information is not clear. When hearing and vision is not consistent but changes depending on tiredness, the light, the environment, it can be hard to access information and make sense of the world. So far we've talked about making things easier to see and hear by using glasses, hearing aids, and adapting the environment to make it more accessible. But at school we were told there were 5 senses. There's more than 5 senses. We use all of our senses to make sense of the world. And the more senses we can use, the richer that learning is. Our basic senses of sight, hearing, smell give us information about what's beyond our body. Taste and touch give us information about what's in the vicinity of our body. Our proprioception is our understanding of how our body is moving relative to itself. Our vestibular system, which is how our body is moving in space and balance, and interoception, which is how our body feels inside. That is our senses of thirst, pain, and hunger. They're interoceptive. They're things that we feel within our body. And for a child with Down syndrome, actually integrating all that information can be more of a challenge. So it's important that we're using as many of the senses as possible to support understanding of a concept. So we'll do a little challenge. We'll start with the challenge of what is an apple? Okay, so if I give you the word apple, if you've never seen an apple, don't know what an apple is, the word doesn't really mean much to you. So we can add to that understanding with the written word. That gives us more information, but not very much. Okay, we can use a line drawing or a symbol. However, on its own, before you have a fuller understanding of what an apple is, this really doesn't tell you very much, even when you colour it in. So, how do we get a better understanding of what an apple really is? A photograph helps. We can get a more sense of how, its shape and size, and but still, that is nowhere near as much information as when you pick up an apple and smell it and taste it, bite into it to feel how hard it is, lick it. This is a much deeper experience, using more of our senses and providing information about more aspects of the item. You want to get a bit more information? Okay, now go into the garden and collect apples from a tree. Run around the tree, swing on a low branch and watch a ripe apple fall from the tree. Collect apples and cut them up for a snack. This experience is truly memorable. Of course, you cannot do this with every concept, but thinking about what you want the child to understand and giving as rich a sensory experience as possible is thinking about creating really strong learning. Okay, so some of the common challenges and some of the solutions that have worked. What we want is for the child for every child to have the best possible access to the world. The first thing to think of is knowledge is power. Remember to ask questions at medical appointments. Ask what when glasses are going to be most useful. How much sound your child can hear with and without their hearing aids. The more you know, the more you can advocate for your child and help them to get the best experience possible. Be persistent. Now, particularly with glasses and hearing aids, the first time they're put on, well, it's different. It's uncomfortable. Your child needs to learn that the benefits of the equipment so that it's worth doing. So be persistent, keep trying, be responsive, notice what works, and then build on that. You know, if your child is more tolerant of their hearing aid while watching cartoons, then then it's that they want their hearing aid for when they've got something worth listening to. Give them things that are worth listening to. You know, watch what is working, and be positive. Praise your child. Praise. You know, we know that praise is what makes a real difference in every child's behaviour. And be observant. If your child has behaviour that is what you don't want, well, look and see what's causing those difficulties, and think about how you can adapt. So you're looking for what works and what doesn't work, and changing what doesn't work to get the best outcome. And don't give up. Now, I hope that this has included some really useful information for you on the vision and hearing of children with Down syndrome and how this can be best accommodated for. Thank you very much for listening.